Welcome to Real Estate Success Expert. I'm your host, David Wynn. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Dave Gallman. He's with Keller Williams. Is that correct?
That's right.
So Dave, welcome to the podcast.
Well, it's great to be here.
Awesome. So you just woke up and started selling real estate, right? How long have you been in the business?
So I have been around Dallas real estate for about 8 years. And my background is a little different. So I grew up around a woman. My mother was a broker, but not doing what I do. She would buy up distressed properties, fix them up, rent them out, and she was doing more investment stuff. So she doesn't really do what I do.
The retail side of it.
I had originally started an agency as a sort of a sideline idea of maybe I would get into flipping. And then one December, the technology company where I worked got bought out and laid us all off. And I went, well, I've got my license. I'm going to do this now. And here I am 8 years later and having more fun and making more money than I ever did in IT. So here we are.
That's awesome. What a great story. So there's a lot of changes that happen in real estate. Let's talk about the last 2 years is what more people are interested in. You know? We're coming off 2023. Dave, I know you weren't affected because I saw your numbers. You had great numbers in 2023, but a lot of people would say 2023 was the worst year in 30 years. Some say it's worse than 2008. We all know what happened with real estate in 2008.
Right.
How were you so successful? How did you keep above everybody else?
So that's a good question. I wish I had here's what I did, the magic sauce. Yeah. So I think actually I had throughout the pandemic market been building customer relationships with people.
Sure.
And some of those folks during the heat of that market were not quite getting the houses that they wanted, the deals they wanted. It was a very intense, very, if you will, cutthroat time to be in real estate. Mm-hmm. And then things cooled off. Interest rates went up a little bit. This is 2023. Those relationships were still there. And people still had a desire to buy real property. And suddenly there was the right kind of inventory for that group of buyers and the right kinds of, deals. I mean, interest rates went up. I would jokingly say with people in the past, well, when they change interest rates, it goes by a quarter of a point. It's not going to go from 4 to 5, right? And it went from 3 to 6, right? And I was right? So that was a big correction. End of Q1, maybe of 2023, I think consumer perception changed and it reverted back to something that looks like a normal market. Everybody had been used to money being 3 1/4.
Right.
Everybody had been used to that high velocity. You've got to go really hard to get any house. And consumer sentiment changed and started to accept that, hey, most of my time in real estate, interest rates have been in the 5s, right? That's what money costs. And everybody was okay with it. I think people started to revert back to the idea that 6 was okay. And I'll say, usually when rates are in the 7s, my phone stops ringing. When they tick down into the 6s, everybody gets interested in going to see houses and sell houses and do business again. That's my anecdotal perception of things, but that tends to be what it is. So I would say part of it is consumer sentiment. So I had the relationships. I'd been working with a lot of those folks, and I think they were okay. The financial part of it with the interest rates was working for them anyway. People were buying points. Affordability was a big question. It's still a big question. But for many of those buyers, that was the right time. And I helped them buy and sell a lot of houses. Now, I will also say, maybe this is where the special sauce lies. I did fewer deals last year that were higher dollar.
Right.
And I think probably people that are a little higher up on the economic food chain are less affected by the interest rates than people are buying a starter family home, something like that. Yeah.
So let's talk about that, Dave. So, you said you don't have the secret sauce, but you actually do have the secret sauce, because one of the things that I heard you say, which is, we talk about this in our business all the time, is you were building relationships and fostering relationships over an extended period of time. And, the price point that you talked about, if we're talking about people that are, 500, buying in the 500s to $1 million range, that's a little bit of a longer of a sales cycle, right? So it takes
Indeed,
a little
yeah.
bit longer to facilitate and foster that relationship, build trust per se, so that they know that you're the trusted advisor. So
Right.
when something pops up, they know exactly who to call, right?
Exactly, yeah. So I would actually even say one of the common experiences I have, I'll meet somebody, I'll get a referral, somebody will come to me online, I'll get some connection with them, and we'll have a phone call. Their expectation typically is that I'm going to expect them to buy a house in 30 days. The timelines for the average consumer that I work with is about 6 to 8 months, right? That's one thing that I think a lot of people, when they're trying to get into the business, don't understand. You're going to find those people that are going to buy a house in 30 to 60 days. Those people are out there. Bless them, right? I mean, that's how we keep our cash flow going.
Absolutely.
But realistically, it's going to be half a year, and that's for a house at 400, that's for a house at 300, that's for a house at 900. In fact, sometimes the houses that are over $1 million, it's a year and a half, because that type of luxury buyer is going to be that much more particular about about the place. You know, it might just take that long for that house to come along. And sometimes those buyers just say, you know what, let's find some land, I'm going to build a house. You know, I've got the resources, I can't find what I want, I'm just going to do it. But maybe that, you know, that is the special sauce, not pressuring somebody, just saying, hey, look, this is a marathon. And the weird thing about what we do as agents is we have no control over the inventory, the product we sell. When the right one comes along, rolls onto the market, then we've got to go fast.
Right.
But that lead up to it is usually slow.
So,
Right.
so let's talk about this real quick. So if I'm a buyer and I call you and I go, Dave, I'm you know, my wife and I are looking to buy a house, you know, and you know, how does that conversation go? How does your conversation go with a potential buyer that may be similar or different to a majority of the agents out there, that, you know, so you can build that relationship, build that trust?
Sure. So I don't pay a super amount of attention to what other agents are doing. I find I have a groove. So, I mean, the initial conversations that we got to have to talk about needs, like a lot, and goals. A lot of times, you know, people who are in this moment, right, they're going to buy or sell a house. One chapter of their life is ending and another one's beginning. Sometimes that's an external force, like I have to be in Denver on July 1st for my new job and I got to sell my house. It could be something where there's an external pressure that says, I got to do this now. But a lot of times it's more that they've reached a moment in their lives. Maybe their family's getting too big for the house they had and they've got to make a move. It's what I often find is that when a consumer feels a sales pressure, let's go find you a house and let's go do it. You know, there was this one broker I was talking to in Amarillo, and he would literally say to people, this is crazy, literally say to people, if you're not going to buy a house today, don't get in my car.
Wow.
Sounds like a car salesman.
I was like, oh, okay. And I mean, that's working for him, but I mean, that's not me.
Right.
Right? So
it's different strokes for different folks, right?
I mean, right, yeah. So, you know, and that's one of those, part of the things about the approach. What we have to do as agents is put them in the right place and set up the right set of circumstances so that when the right house comes along, they can get the best deal possible on that house, right? That could be 30 days, that could be 90 days, that could be 6 months, that could be longer, right? I was talking metrics with some other agents, and they were saying, oh, you know, well, my brokerage, we track these things, and we get certain metrics, and we get certain spiffs or certain accolades if we do deals within a certain time frame. And I was like, I think that's backwards. It's the guy you talked to 2 years ago that you've nurtured for 2 years that you then close the deal with. That's where you should be getting the accolades, because you have invested in that person's success.
And you followed up.
And you followed up, and you cared about what their needs and their goals were, right? And when and too often in real estate, we take a salesy approach.
Right.
Right? Okay, let's go find you a house. Let's go make that deal. And
as opposed to being like a good listener.
For one, yeah, I mean, that helps, certainly. And, it's an emotional process for the consumer. We often don't
Take that into consideration.
take that into consideration.
Yeah.
This is
Makes perfect sense.
it's a highly emotional thing. There was this PBS show about the condition of ADHD,
Okay.
right? And one of the actors from the Red Green show was being interviewed on it, and he has ADHD. And he said, here is one way this expressed itself. I was sitting in my car on the highway, the traffic was backed up, we were dead stopped in traffic, and I started to lose patience. And I pulled off on the access road, and I pulled into a car dealership, and I bought a new car. And I waited for the traffic to clear away, and I drove home in my new car. And so I was like, well, first, it must be nice. I mean,
Right?
I need some of that actor money, right? But you can't do that with a house, right?
No.
The process has got too many checks and balances.
Right.
It's got too many
Variables.
and it's got too much emotion. And it's not something that you can just go do in the way that you can do almost anything else in our consumer world, right? And we do it differently than anything else in our consumer world. Most of the commerce that we do day in and day out is simple. There's a price fixed. That sandwich is $3.50. I'm going to give you my $3.50. I'm going to get the sandwich. Everybody got what they wanted, and it was upfront and clear, right? Real estate isn't like that. Practically every component of it is negotiation. And Americans, we don't negotiate a lot. Put an asterisk by it. There are a lot of business people out there in the world. There's a lot of lawyers. There's a lot of people out there who negotiate a lot. But the general consumer has a fixed price model for commerce, right? And an expectation for that, right? What we do in part as agents is navigate that world of the deal making, and help them get to maybe not the greatest deal in the world.
Right.
None of us can say, I've got you the deal of the century. Sometimes it works out that way. Sometimes it works out that way. But we can get them at least what is a fair deal.
Right.
When everybody closes, they go, I paid a fair price, and I know what I'm getting. I have a good and thorough knowledge that I know what I'm paying for, and I feel content with it. Right.
So would you say a
Yeah.
majority of the consumers in America, based on what you're talking about, because Dave and I talk about this all the time, which is, there's personality tests, there's high Ds, high Is, S's. Most people want to be led, right? Give good information and led to a situation, like you said, where you find, something that fits their needs, wants, desires, and then you as an agent lead them to that and go, okay, here, based on everything we've talked about, here's the ideal scenario for you, and this is the ideal price of this would be this, and then it's still somewhat negotiable at that point.
Yeah. Do I think the consumers want to be led? I think they want to be guided.
Right.
I think they want to be guided. Led might be a little too strong a word, but guided. I often feel like agents fail in their expectations is just in providing a depth of information and then some analysis of saying, here are the various terms that are involved in this deal. Here's what is normal, right, reasonable. Here's the fair market value for this house, right? Often, like when we're talking about price, if something is a fair market value, offering list price, hey, to the consumer, the buyer always wants to feel like they got a deal.
Right.
But they always want to be a little bit less than that. But just saying, hey, if this seller is asking a fair price for it, paying a fair price is okay, right? Mm-hmm. This is not a bad deal, right? Obviously, we want to try and get a better deal than that if we can. But I would say presenting information and allowing those people to make an informed decision that is right for them. And then when they come back and want some guidance, we can say, okay, well, you want to look at new build homes. Okay, here are the areas where there are new builds in your price point. There's really good schools over here. I don't know about the schools over there. You don't want this long a commute. We might have to look up, those kinds of things where you present information to people so that they can sift out and make the best decision for themselves. Mm-hmm. And then when they come back to you and say, okay, I don't know how to make sense of this, you can talk them through what, let's just say the median is. Like, there's going to be.
Hey guys, it's Devin.
And David.
We're your real estate success partners. Hey, if you're enjoying these podcasts and want us to keep bringing back this content, we truly appreciate you following us. But if you could go below and subscribe or make some comments, we'd truly appreciate it. And we'll keep bringing back great content in 2024.
A common experience or expectation that's in the middle, right? And you can say, this is typically what happens here. There might be some experience you get on either end that's particularly good or particularly bad, but you're going to probably say, as these things go, it's going to be kind of in this range, and then they can make a decision.
Well, I can tell you,
I don't know if that.
No, it was.
That was kind of vague. But
I can tell you, just listening to you, your superpower is definitely relationship, Dave. You build great relationships. It sounds like you're always there for your clients. I want to dive into that a little bit.
Sure.
I know organically most of your leads come from your sphere of influence or whatever. Do you do any of these internet leads or paid leads or anything like that?
I do. Yep.
Okay.
I think and this is something that I talk to with newer agents in my office, right? You have to just have many irons in the fire, many different sources of leads coming to you, and they're going to be.
Fishing poles in the water, per se.
Yeah.
What do we say?
Yeah.
Elephant marketing. Octopus
marketing.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do everything all the time perfectly forever. Right. You have to have some focus on some things, but this is the thing that I have a problem with. I'll see agents on our little Facebook groups or whatever forums going, oh, the lead source of such and such, it produces crappy leads, and these are all bad leads. And I'm like, it's not that the leads are bad. It's that the leads aren't giving you what you want. The leads are, somebody's raising their hand and saying, I want some information. I want some conversation. I want something. But they might be a year away from buying a house. They might be 18 months. They might be never. You have to just ask another question. You've got it. And you have to have maybe a follow-up system in place for different types of people. They're the people who are the
money's
timeline.
in the follow-up.
The money's in the follow-up. The timeline might be 18 months for them. But their money is green, and you need that deal 18 months from now, right? I mean, you're right. And so it's not that the leads are bad. Here's an example of an online lead I got. And then when I talk with newer agents.
Greener agents.
Greener agents.
Right.
So I got a phone call, and it was this couple, and they said, hey, I want to see this condo on Park Lane. Can you set up an appointment for me? I said, and I pulled it up and I looked at it and I went, oh boy. And I said, well, you don't know me, I don't know you, but
no dangerous area.
But you don't want this condo on Park Lane. Okay, well, why not? I had some other people interested in it. I know a little bit about it. The HOA currently has 2 lawsuits against it, and they're nasty, and you don't want to buy into a set of nasty lawsuits.
Yeah.
The price may look good, but it's because people are trying to get away from this property, right? You probably don't want it. And so we then, and I think I had, if you will, a unit of trust, not because
100%.
Not because I was trying to, if I were hustling them for commission, say, hey,
yeah, absolutely.
273, this is an easy deal. We can make this deal. You can do it, and I can dump this turd on you, and I can be out the door, and I can take my commission and could get lost or whatever. That wasn't the thing. So I talked to them a little longer, and she said, well, I've really had trouble having people call me back. I said, okay. And I'm starting to think, all right. And I said, well, why is that? And she's like, I said, where are you in your process? Have you applied for a loan? Have you sought any financing? I mean, what's your story? She said, a phrase, and I immediately knew why nobody was calling her back. She said, my husband and I don't believe in paying interest. Right? And I can hear in the, every other agent in the world going, thunk, in the phone going, okay, I'm out, right? So in context, that is the worst thing you can say to somebody.
Right.
Right? They're devout Muslim.
Right.
There are special lenders that allow them to buy and sell houses and get around the
Interest.
profits prohibition against paying interest.
Right.
Right? But unless you make ask that next question, okay, so are you a cash buyer? Like, how are we going to go about this? Unless you ask that second question, you never get to a good customer.
Right.
Right? So they were relocating here. I set them up on a 6-month lease at one of those apartment complexes that at the time paid 100% commission. So I made $3,000 or $4,000 on the lease. We bought them a nice townhouse in Plano, and I made a nice commission off that. We're hunting for their dream home in Parker, which will be a $1.2 million house. We're maybe going to sell or lease their condo in Plano, right? Because I asked 2 extra questions about that particular
Situation.
That particular situation.
Yeah.
Did I make money off them right away? Nope. They were interested in buying. We saw a bunch of places. They said, we're going to lease. I said, okay. Every agent hates the lease work because it's the same amount of work as a purchase, but the money is tiny.
Right.
I did it. That got them settled in Dallas. That opened up the door for 3 or 4 other transactions.
Right.
And referrals, right? So you've got all these different lead sources that are coming in, and you have to ask the second and third question, and then you have to know how to use your time. Okay, this person over here, they're really just starting to think about this thing, and they don't know what they don't know. How can I have those conversations with them and find out what their needs are and what their timeline is, right? And their timeline may be, only if the deal is perfect would I do this, in which case they're probably in a longer nurture cycle. Right? Some people, like the previous folks, they were moving here and they needed a place to stay, right? Their needs are more immediate. How can we find the right fit for them, right? So, yeah, I mean, I think you have to have multiple lead sources, and then you have to deal with those people as they come in and try and figure out what they need and how you can help them and, what makes sense for those people.
Again, superpower relationship, Dave.
Well, thank you.
Amazing.
I mean,
that's amazing.
I think when we go into sales mode and we try and sell someone a
Yes.
house, it almost always fails, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you meet that guy at the open house and he says, I want to buy this house, I want you to write the offer, it almost never works out.
Yeah.
Right? The instant thing almost never works out.
This is the whole too good to be true scenario.
Yeah, I mean, it happens once in a while where all the planets align. It doesn't happen that often.
I was gonna say, it's ironic. I was gonna say your superpower is listening because, some of the greatest salespeople in any industry, they ask the question and then they let the consumer talk. I think one of the big challenges that less successful salespeople in any industry have is they talk too much. They don't listen enough. And it goes back to what we all were taught when we were kids. It was like, from your parents, it was like, hey, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Use them accordingly, right? And I think you do a great job of asking questions, listening to what the consumer's needs are, what their timeline is, asking more clarifying questions, peeling the onion back per se.
Yeah.
And I think that's your superpower. Is you're just a great listener, and like my wife used to be in the media, you're a great interviewer per se. So, and I think that's a wonderful trait because, like you've said it a couple times, is too many times people talk too much and they don't listen to what the consumer's needs and wants and timelines are. Therefore, if you're not going to listen to them, how do you know what to put them in, or how do we know how to take care of their needs. So I think that's an awesome question. So let's talk about this. You're still having tremendous success in the market we're having right now. What are Dave Gallman's goals moving forward? I mean, are you trying to do more volume, or are you trying to be more efficient with your time? You trying to build a team? Would you like to be a broker? Talk about some of your, you've been in the business long enough now where I'm sure you've taken a step back and said, okay, I've had this success. Where do I go from here?
Sure. So I am pursuing my broker's license. That's exciting for me. I'm fairly far along in that process. That might be news to some of the people back in my office. So what I have found is, as I've been at my office, and I love everyone there, is that I've been working with newer agents who are new to the business, and I've been trying to, there are so many training programs. And I think often what a lot of the training programs skip is, here's how you survive, right? It's going to take a new agent
6 months at least,
18 months or 2 years to be on their feet in the business.
Okay.
Slightly different perspective.
Well,
yeah.
my mom used to say back in the day, she'd be like, hey, if you don't have 6 months of reserves in the bank, cover your bills for at least 6 months, don't even think about becoming an agent.
Why do 75% of the agents fail out in the first 9 months? Because they don't have the cash reserves, and they don't have enough time to build up a pipeline where, where I'm saying, hey, if the timeline is 6 to 8 months, and you're starting on day one with nothing, right? When are you going to fail out? About 9 months,
yeah,
right? Because it's going to just take you that long to develop the business in a way that it's going to start producing for you, right? I think it takes that much longer. So you were talking about goals. I'm going to get my broker's license. I like working with, I think, newer agents. I like bringing them along. I'd like to think I do things a little differently than what a lot of people in the industry do, and that a part of my success has been that approach. So yeah, I'd like to build a team. I'd like to, I think, an individual agent, and this has got to do with units of time and energy and effort, the most efficient agent in the world as an individual, one person with their phone and their laptop, if they're doing soup to nuts, the whole deal, can do between 30 and 40 deals a year. If they are doing all the transaction coordination, if they're doing all the hand-holding for everybody. And that is a fine living, but you are maxed out around 40 deals. There's just not more units of time left in a day or a week.
Unless you're a vampire and you don't sleep.
So I mean, I think like sometimes the really super young agents who just have infinite amounts of energy. I don't. I've got 2 kids. I fall asleep at some point. I'll be like, and I fall asleep at my laptop because I just don't have the energy to do those all-nighters anymore. That sounds like torture to me. I have to be more careful with my time because I only have a finite amount of energy.
Well, and the other thing is, like, to touch on that, add on to that, that's not really a quality of life, right? It's that most people would want to sustain, right? So
this was, all of us have work-life balance issues at some point in real estate. Almost everyone does, and you read those books about how to be a real estate agent, and there's a chapter on work-life balance because everybody comes. The heat of the pandemic market, right? I mean, we were all rocking and rolling. We were all making good money. I had my best, the first year of the pandemic, everybody was in lockdown for 6 months. I had my best year in the second 6 months of that year than I had previous in my career, but it was in 6 months. Right. And in December, my wife was like, it's nice to see you again, because I was out the door hustling. I was up late on the computer. I was taking the phone calls, and I was not there, right? People sometimes criticize real estate agents like, well, you guys take over November and December. Sure. If you look at market season, the transaction volume is in the dumpster, right? It's really low. people are planning Christmas parties and Thanksgiving, and they're getting time, there's just fewer deals happening because of that time of the year.
The dynamic.
Right? And that's when we take off because there's just less stuff going on. And the rest of the year, we're maxing out.
Full tilt.
Right?
Full tilt.
For full tilt, right?
Yeah.
So in a certain regard, it's like, if you will, like teachers or high school teachers or something who are going to have a very intense 9-month period of time teaching and then a few months off. It tends to go that way. I wind up doing deals in November, December, January every year, but instead of 4, 5, 6 deals in a month, it might be 1, and that's okay, right? But anyway.
Dave, we can sit here and talk to you all
Yeah.
day long, and the audience love it. But at a certain point, we got to go.
Yeah.
So what have we not talked about today that you want to talk
Is there
about?
anything you want to talk about that we didn't ask you?
So let's talk about all of the stuff that's been happening in the industry.
Okay.
And where it's headed.
Were we talking about NAR?
We're talking about
specifically?
NAR,
Okay.
right?
Let's touch on that.
Yeah. So I think we all have some trepidation about what's going to happen. My criticism of what has happened, what has taken place, is that we've, again, all of these people, top-level attorneys, brokerages, national associations, MLS leaders, and so forth, have been having all these high-level conversations, and they've been lobbing lawsuits at each other, and they've been defending them and negotiating about what changes need to happen and so forth. And none of them have taken the consumer into consideration. I'm watching this.
I agree.
I can't believe what I'm seeing. The process of buying or selling a house is a consumer unfriendly process. From the first day I was in real estate, you go through this process. So some of the negativity towards the industry, towards people like me, real estate agents, we barely ever work and we make all this money and it's really easy and all that, is earned because the process is inherently emotional. The emotions are ramped up by the fact that there's a lot of money involved, and there's a lot of different parties who have a say in the process, getting from I found my house to I have my keys in my hand, or I need to sell my house and I have now got a closed deal and I've got my proceeds. It's a consumer unfriendly process. And in many instances, it can seem that way because there are protections built in for the parties. Mm-hmm. So there are milestones that other people might not know about or accept as being necessary for a good transition of real property. We always talk about, in real estate, the sexy parts. How much is it going to sell for, and how fast can I have it? The time and the money. But we never talk about the third leg of the stool, or very rarely, the quality. And what does that mean? A clean transition of real property. It means that people feel like they got a fair deal. Maybe not the greatest deal in the world, but a fair deal. And that when that chapter ends, it's over. And that means no lawsuits after the fact, right? If you had that experience, I can almost guarantee you a good agent was involved. The challenge that we have in our business is a bad agent can have an easy process where things go through and they get their commission, everybody's happy. A good agent can take a bad process and just keep it barely out of the fire and get it to the closing table. So it can be hard to judge, right? Because the deals are so variable. What we're failing in doing is taking the consumer into consideration. We forget, we do deals day in, day out, week in, week out, that for most of these people, this is the first time, or maybe in their lives, they're going to do the purchase or sale of a house 3 times.
Right.
Sure.
Right?
It's the largest financial transaction they're ever going to make.
Right. It's the stress in part is because of the money involved. I kind of joke with my lender friends. When you talk about the term of most loans, it's equivalent to a felony prison sentence, It's 15 years to life. It's 30 years, right? These are the units of time that we're talking about. And that, and I mean that jokingly, right?
Right.
But we're leaving the consumer out of all these conversations. People who are making decisions and trying to adjust the dials, the attorneys and for the plaintiffs, and the leadership in these various big brokerages and so forth, are turning the dials in ways that will have very bad unintended consequences for the consumer. And I don't feel like anybody's doing the math and going, instead of imposing this rule or that rule, I mean, does anybody really think that removing the commission percentages off of MLS is going to change compensation?
No.
No, nobody thinks that. It's going to disrupt a lot of deals, and it's going to make things a little bit hinky for about 18 months. But nobody thinks that that's actually going to solve anything. Nobody's going to suddenly go, you know what? It's all clear to me now. I feel good about all of this. No, I mean, that's not that.
Yeah.
Hey, I have to have a signed buyer's representation agreement before I show a single house. There's no enforcement on that. The monkeys are in charge of the bananas there. That's not going to change anything.
Right.
These things, now, there's going to be a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
So let me ask you.
And I just think, like, we've got to go back and start thinking as if we are the consumer for whom this is a new thing. Or maybe they did it 5 or 10 years ago, and the game will have changed just a little bit in that time. And we're leaving the consumer experience out of the conversation.
So,
I mean, that's
so in your opinion, because I talked to my dad about this, who's still teaches in at Champion School, and he's like, his perspective is NAR laid down and didn't represent the realtors at all. More importantly, it's really not going to change how anybody does business because the BBA agreement was there the whole time, which it clearly states in there. If we're going to try to get the seller to cover the commission, however, if the seller for whatever reason doesn't cover the commission, you, the buyer, are still ultimately responsible for that. And so he's like, this is a big to-do about nothing, and I think you just touched on it. It's like, is this going to change really anything other than like what we think is going to happen? Is it's going to make the true professionals, the David Gallmans of the world, stand out because they already do go through all the, the buyer rep agreement and explain everything to the consumer so they know what's going on. It's going to kind of weed out the riffraff or the people that the transactionally based realtors.
The transactional based people, 80% of the folks, and this is maybe too bad, right? 80% of the folks in the world in residential real estate do 1 to 4 deals a year in U.S. Do 1 to 4 deals. 80% of the agents do 1 to 4 deals. So this is a sideline business.
Right.
This is not their full-time, or it could be. I don't know where they are, what size deals those are, but by and large, this is probably a second income. And that's not to say those are bad deals. That's not to say those are bad people. In general, one of my small resentments towards all of the negativity towards agents is a lot of the agents I've met are good people, and they want to do right by their customer. Some of them are not good at that, so some of them are. I think if a bunch of the people who are not full-timers were weeded out of the business, it would probably make the business healthier.
Right.
Right. The people, and I've talked to brokers who say, look, that one deal a year agent who hangs on is a lawsuit liability to us. Like some of them will weed out the people that are doing one deal because they're not committed to the business. They're not really serious professionals about it. If some of those people went away, and I'm not trying to take food out of anybody's mouth or anything, it would probably be good. It'd probably be good for the business. It would probably elevate to some degree a level of professionalism.
Right.
If there were just. So, yeah, I mean, we as real estate professionals will assess the landscape and we'll figure out how to make money.
At the end of the day, here's what I tell people all the time. Back in 2008, there's a law called the Durbin Act that regulated the mortgage industry. And last time I saw, we're still doing mortgages. Real estate's going to be around.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, it's not going to suddenly disappear. And even some of the people have said, like, "What do you think is going to happen?" I was like, this is a very big ship, and it's going to turn slowly. I don't know what the contracts were like in Missouri. I don't know what the contracts were like. So maybe the commission structures and stuff were more obtuse.
Yeah.
In Texas, I was like, it's in the TREC buyer's representatives, it's like 12A or B or 11A or B, that paragraph. That's the paragraph I get questioned about every buyer's representation agreement.
Right.
That's the one that says, if the seller doesn't pay, you, Mr. Buyer, are going to pay my fee. I'm going to collect from you.
Right.
That's the one everybody asks me about.
Right.
Again, it's been in there for years.
It's always been.
It's always been in there.
If you look at the listing agreement, here's what I'm going to charge you for marketing and selling your property, and here's what I'm going to pay the buyer's agent. There it is. There was no confusion about what those were. Now, there are brokers out there who would say, "Oh, always talk about it in terms of percentages," because people won't do the math. They'll say, "Oh, well, 6%, that's not very much." But if they've got a $500,000 house and you say, "I'm going to charge you $30,000 for this," they'll go, "Whoa, that's too much."
Right.
Right? When the actual numbers. And that's too bad, because we should be having those conversations. We should be saying, "Here's what the real numbers look like."
No, I agree.
Let's not.
I think you touched on it.
Yeah.
I think you touched on it greatly. Well, I mean,
we
could sit here and talk to you all day, man.
I would love to.
I just love the perspective. But Dave, we got to wrap this up.
I hate to say this. I have to wrap it up too, because I have to go show houses.
There you go.
I got 4 more appointments this afternoon.
If the people want to find you,
Sure.
How do they find you? And we're going to put it on the lower thirds over here,
Sure.
Dave.
Okay, so probably the easiest way to get in touch with me is by phone. So definitely give me a call at 310-600-1327. It is a strange area code. I am here in Dallas, Texas. Don't be put off by it. Dave at davegallman.com, Gallman. That's another way. Email is a great way to do it. Call me or text me or email me is good. I have a website, davegallman.com. It's probably easiest to find me on Facebook.
There you go. All right, and if you are looking for real estate out there in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I would call Dave Gallman. He's the best. So we're Real Estate Success Partners. We'll see you later. Bye, guys.
See ya.